just hit this streaming button. Take me a few seconds to take me to the YouTube site. And we are live.
Okay. So we're going to begin. Good morning. My name is David Merriman. I am the chair of the Cuyahoga County Equity Commission, and we're going to call to order the meeting for April 15th, 2021. And want to just begin by ensuring that we have participation and quorum. So on behalf of the Department of Development, Paul Hertig, are you there? Paul, are you there? Are you muted?
Now unmuted, and I am here.
Wonderful. On behalf of the Department of Human Resources, Sheba Marshall, are you there?
I am here.
On behalf of the Department of Justice Services, Alex Pelham, are you there?
Present.
And on behalf of the Office of Procurement and Diversity, Lenora Lockett.
Here. Thank you.
And I represent the Department of Health and Human Services. We have a quorum. Kadi, could you please, I think our first item on the agenda is the minutes, but I do think it may be worthwhile acknowledging at this first stage that we've had transitions, that Ted Carter obviously has moved on from his role, that we have, that Paul Hertig is now serving in a in an interim role. Is that accurate, Paul? Is that how it's being presented for participation?
Correct. Interim chief.
Okay. And so you'll be participating in these meetings until further notice?
Yes.
And then Jesse Drucker is not in the office today, so Sheba has been acknowledged as the alternate for the Department of Human Resources. And Kadi, you have that, and that's been confirmed?
Correct. Yes. Thank you.
All right. So then, so I just want the minutes to reflect those membership changes for this week. If we can move on to the minutes. Anthony Thomas, are you here today?
He is not here today. No.
Okay. Who is capturing the minutes then?
I will be capturing minutes for today's meeting.
Okay. Kadi, I think we've posted the minutes. Are there any questions or amendments to the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
Alex Pelham, motion to approve.
Second? I'll second them. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, the minutes are approved. Kadi, I think we now are going to move on to updates. So I'm gonna begin by seeing if you have any updates on behalf of the commission itself, and then we'll go around and ask each of the commission members if they have any updates they'd like to share.
The updates, I think, would be around leadership of who, with the transition, which you already discussed. And the items that we'll be discussing in the agenda would be the update. So I will stop there.
Okay. Paul, anything to share from your team and from the Department of Development?
Yes, thank you, David. The Department of Development is preparing to issue a formal request for qualifications for funding to support small business support organizations. And in preparing this request for qualifications, there will be a distinct focus on organizations which serve minority-owned businesses. So it is our intent that the funds provided through this RFQ will continue to support the department's commitment to advancing equity in its work.
Sounds great. Any questions for Paul? Alex, anything to share?
Yes, David, thank you. So we have been, our department, having emergency management, has been in the throes of this COVID response. So there's a lot that we've been working on with that. But what we've been pushing specifically for Equity Commission is we have spread the news of the GARE membership to the entire department throughout our quarterly newsletter that we have. We've encouraged sign up as well as other participation. One of the things that while we are not a pilot agency, we started working on, thanks to HR, we got a breakdown of demographics of our department, and we started to look at the overview by division for things such as race, gender, length of service, as well as looking at it not only from a flat line of just everyone in the division, but also looking at by tiers of employment, if you will. So if you are a supervisor, what does that makeup look like? If you're an entry-level position, what does that look like? What does management look like? To where we can get a full understanding of where our department lies as we move forward, to look at where some of our, our strengths or weaknesses in reality are. The other thing that we've been working on is looking at our programs and our outcomes. So in our, HHS has huge public service pieces, and when we look at our programs and how we are able to interact with the community, some of our residents, some of our fire departments and police departments, we've looked at grant allocations. We've looked at our boards that determine these grant allocations, because we know if the boards are made up of a certain way, there may be the way these grants are being determined. If there aren't people from certain communities that are on these boards making decisions, that can directly influence the way grant monies, grant properties are pushed together. So we are in that kind of assessment process. I think we're moving forward like we're a pilot agency, even though we're not. We are in that using some of the stuff that Sabrina and Leon have pushed forward with the departmental self-assessment. We are getting ready to start that, and we've been reaching out to members of your team about how they were able to effectively survey employees, as well as to start that employee working group. So we're trudging forward regardless of pilot agency or not, and we're going to keep going. So the one thing I would be remiss, David, if I didn't do is I'd just like to point out to anybody watching this or anybody listening, we continue the vaccine effort, and we're continuing to try and hit the entire county. And this Friday and Saturday in Maple Heights, there is a clinic which is free. You can go, there are a couple different ways that you can sign up. You can go to the state site, which is gettheshot.coronavirus.ohio.gov, or you can call 211 and they can get you registered. Like I said, so they can also help you with transportation needs. So what we don't want is that digital divide to cause anyone not to be able to get service, and we also don't want a transportation issue. So if you have any issue or any challenges getting signed up, please call 211 and they can help you get done immediately. That's all I got, David. Thank you.
So I know as we move on to the agenda, we'll be talking about some other issues that are largely being led by multidisciplinary teams. And so I'm going to ask for the Department of Health and Human Service for updates. I'm going to ask if Leon Harris or Sabrina Roberts have any updates on behalf of the DHHS REI Steering Committee.
Good morning, everyone. This is Leon Harris. As far as Health and Human Services, we continue to move forward with our efforts related to racial equity and inclusion. Today, we have our second crucial conversation this week. This is the second second workshop in our series. We had our initial series was in February, and this is our second one. So we have one on Tuesday, and we have another one today, and it'll be focused on voting rights and disenfranchisement. That's what we focused on this week. The first one went well. We're also, we work with our communications team to push out a racial equity impact analysis tool. That tool helps to guide decisions and thoughts and programs and practice ideas, just making sure that we have everyone at the table when decisions around policy or practices are being made, making sure that we have, various community members at the table when we're making decisions around practice or policy. So we continue our efforts. We continue to meet as a steering committee, and we continue to meet with our employee resource groups to identify gaps and other issues that need to be addressed within Health and Human Services and come up with plans to do so. Sabrina, would you like to add anything?
That covers it, Leon. Thanks. And just as a note, the crucial conversations, our staff members are doing this during their lunch hours. So a lot of interest that they would brown bag lunch to have the discussion. Thank you.
So one thing I do also want to acknowledge, Sabrina has been spearheading an effort for us to be working with a local organization applying for a federal grant around health literacy that would target underserved populations. And so I feel like much of the work that we're doing is iterative, and we're constantly jumping into new projects while trying to stay focused. So I want to acknowledge Sabrina's willingness to jump into a new project and take on a lot of project management work with a short turnaround time frame. One other just major announcement that I'm excited to share is Dr. Leon Harris was promoted on Monday to be the Assistant Director of the Department of Health and Human Services. As many of you know, Leon has been serving in that role in an acting fashion for the past year, largely responsible for DHHS's a lot of the tactical things that we're doing with COVID, things like the PPE management. But really, I think the greatest work that DHHS could be doing right now is around the REI work that he and Sabrina are leading. And it's with great honor and I think excitement that I share Leon accepted this position, because I feel like it's a huge opportunity for the county to have a formal sort of declaration of someone of Leon's caliber coming into the position, and I expect a lot of great things to come from this. And so congratulations to Leon.
Thank you, David.
So so Lenora, I think we've got some exciting news this week as well. So saving a little bit more time for you, and then also I think I'll finish with HR, because I think we'll be talking about the RFP next. But why don't you go first, because I think there's some other really exciting announcements.
Thanks, David. I was going to be brief, but the announcement is regarding the fact that the legislation was formally introduced on April 13th to County Council. Is that the regarding the establishment of the Department of Diversity and the Department of Equity and Inclusion. Is scheduled for its first committee hearing, I believe, on April 20th. So that is exciting news for REI in general for Cuyahoga County. And also Friday is the deadline for one of our first drafts of the purchasing plan, which is part of the external inclusion effort as far as our contracting. So we know that the internal is also important as us, and is the external. So that's moving forward also with letting people know that there are opportunities with the county and giving them that heads up time for a 24-month period to know what we plan to be buying, so that they can network and get geared up so that they can participate. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, I think Lenora, the county has done well to ask you to shepherd the legislation of the new department through the process. I know it's a lot of work for you. I know you're very busy with a lot of other system transitions, and so I think on behalf of the Equity Commission, please let us know if there's any part of this work that you need assistance with, because I think you're managing very, very complicated tasks concurrently, and a lot is on your shoulders right now. And I know you can do it, but I think we're all here to support you. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Any questions for Lenora? Sheba, saving you for last for the opening remarks and updates, and then I think I would turn it over to you, because we'll then be moving into the RFP discussion.
Okay, so Human Resources has 2 initiatives already out there working on jobs and how we can move from not necessarily having to have a degree, where your experience is going to count for just as much. One of the initiatives, and the tuition waiver, I know has been presented to the county executive. So that's the update there. The Human Resources Division, while we were sort of a pilot last year, we've taken a former role as a pilot this year. And so we started those conversations working on establishing our committee. But we had a great introductory meeting about our role, how it relates to the county, because I like what Mr. Pelham had to say. A lot of who sits in the seats guides and direct policies that go forward. A lot happens with HR. A lot of what we do in HR guides and directs how some of the things that go on in the county continue to grow and go. So we're still working on that. I think that's kind of our update. You know, we're working and moving forward, having those crucial conversations as Leon stated. We're starting them and very excited about how we fit and what we can do. I know Jesse's been more involved, and so that's sort of my update, and I'll leave it at that.
Are there any questions for Sheba? I know that our next item is the discussion of the RFP. I think that bringing in a consultant to help advise the county on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Some of that will be talking about training. I think we tend to think of that as a responsibility and a function of HR, but I think what we're now acknowledging is that it's much more than that. And I think it is great for us to have partners in HR and inclusion in this committee for us to be thinking, reviewing proposals and taking a look at where I think we need to go as it relates to cross the board training, but other areas of change for the county. So I'm going to move us to that point in the agenda. Kadi, can you introduce just provide us a status update and see if there are other updates from commission members or guests on the RFP?
Sure. The RFPs closed yesterday, April 13th at April 14th at 11 o'clock in the morning. I heard from OPD that we have 3 submissions. We are hoping to have a selection committee review applications April 30th. And I think there was questions around making recommendations of who should serve as part of the selection committee.
So let me start it with some feedback that I've gotten. So I think there is interest to have more inclusion in the selection committee from within the departments, as well as there is interest now to have the Citizens Advisory Council on Equity participate in the selection committee. If I recall, the plan was for each of the named entities of the Equity Commission would send 1 representative. I think that's a good plan. I do think we have the time. I think this is a manageable amount of work, and I think we would do well to include more participants. So I, for one, know that there's at least one other person in DHHS that would like to participate. And I want to begin by just opening up discussion. Do the other commission members, on behalf of your departments, do you see value in adding more people to the RFP review and that selection process? And if so, would you intend to just send the 1 person, or would you like to send more than 1 person?
All right, this is Lenora. I'm always open to inclusion. If the decision is made to allow more than 1 person, I would definitely want Edwin Nunez, who leads the diversity division for the Office of Procurement and Diversity, to be on the selection committee. My only, again, as the procurement person, is always just before we start down the evaluation process, that we have a clear idea who's going to be on the committee and how we're going to proceed, knowing that there could be flexibility, but I don't want someone added at the end or something to that effect. So I think we should have an opportunity now to change it and add additional people. The earlier, the better.
I know for HR, it's also the same thing. I like your comments because I would echo those. We would like to add 1 additional individual. And to do that at the beginning of the process, if it's available.
Okay.
David, this is Alex. I agree with all of that's been said to this point, except the only thing that I would add is I don't want to get it too big, because at some point the decisions have to be made and the coordination has to be made. And I know in grading some of these, and Lenora can say if someone is there for most of it and misses one, there are issues with scoring, there are issues with consistency. So while I think it is inclusion and having more people in is a good thing, I also think we've got to find a happy medium between having too many people in so that we can keep consistency in that. And if that means me stepping off and letting someone like Lindy Burt sit on to where it's a different perspective, you know, I'm good with that, or adding people, just something to think about as we go.
David, to your point of the request by the CACE, certainly it's a great idea to have their engagement, and I fully support doing that. And in terms of Department of Development sending representative, I think we would want to have one representative from the Department of Development. And while I would, my first tendency would be to lean on Kari. I believe she has a coordinating role. And so we will send another person who's been active in the internal work that Kari has been leading in our internal equity team. And I do have someone in mind who not only has been active in that work, but also has experience with procurement. So I think they'll be able to support and not hinder the procurement work that needs to be done.
So, you know, I think Alex raises some good points about this not becoming too big. And, but I would honor the request that we include more participants, just because I think the perspectives will be valuable. So I think if we could go ahead and make the decision, we're going to open it up, allow a department to send 1 or 2 participants to review the screening. I don't think it'll be an issue whether they send 1 or 2. It will be their decision to do so. DHHS is going to send 2. I think Leon Harris has agreed to participate, and Sabrina Roberts has agreed to participate. And so I think that's what we're going to want to do from DHHS's perspective. I would ask, I think Lenora has identified so Lenora, is it yourself and Edwin Nunez that would be participating?
Yes.
Okay. And Sheba, do you know who your 2 participants would be?
Yeah, it would be me and Deborah Johnson.
Great. And then, so I think what I'm hearing is, Alex, you may want to have 2 people, or you might feel comfortable.
Yeah, we will, Dave. I'll get you the name before the end of the day.
All right. And then, Paul, I'm hearing you're sticking with 1, although, you know, Kadi is also going to be serving in a coordinating role as well. So 2 people supporting the process. Kadi will be much more tactical in managing the process.
And David, I'll get you that name today also.
Great. If you could, I'd ask each department to submit their names to Kadi, just so she has it. I mean, it's here today. It's on the record. But if you didn't state who it is, please submit it to Kadi directly.
Okay.
And then, so the other half, and Paul alluded to this, is the request by CASE, the Citizens Advisory Council on Equity, to participate. And so I'm going to just, I agree. I think I see it as valuable to include the external entities, to include the public in this process. And I think this is one way for us to do that. So I, for one, would support the request on their behalf to have two individuals, 2 representatives from CASE to participate. Does anybody have any other feelings or perspectives on that?
This is Lenora. I agree with having representation from CASE. I think we need to do some procedural things, because a couple of things. It's an RFP through the county as part of in compliance with the Ohio Revised Code. Even once we make a recommendation, until we submit a contract for approval, none of those documents are, the proposals are eligible for public information because of the negotiation process. So while internally everyone may be aware of that, we need to make sure that when the CASE representatives, that they know the documents that they're going to be received are not eligible for public distribution or sharing until we have a contract negotiated.
So Lenora, a question: if they identify their two representatives, at that point, should we let them know who the applicants are so that they can do a preliminary conflict of interest review?
Yes.
Okay.
So they can know who so public records, the tab sheet is available, meaning anyone today can ask at a public record who submitted, but we do not provide the contents of those proposals until after an award has been made, or we reject all contracts. And that's different from a bid. A bid, because picking based on price is fixed and that's it. A RFP, you're negotiating. And because negotiations may not be successful and you may need to go to the next vendor and things of that sort, by ORC, they're not eligible. They're not, you don't have to provide those part of the public records request.
And so Lenora, from your shop's perspective, is there the same sort of conflict of interest statement that needs to be done internally, externally for everyone reviewing proposals? And then do you also ask for everyone to sign off on the confidentiality while you're in the review phase?
Well, county employees, again, we haven't done that because they should be already, they're under IG requirements. So you should be disclosing any conflict of, in general, as part of your role, employment. I'll have to look at what has been done. This has been done for several other entities we've had. So it's not a big deal. We've had projects where an external entity is part of the selection process. So it's nothing to preclude and it's nothing to say that this can't be done. It's just, we have to make sure that once they provide their representatives, that they know that those documents are not eligible until after the award for public distribution or things of that sort. And Alex, you're in the front. You deal with this a lot with because a lot of your selections are by external bodies. So you can, if you want to add some with your experience with that.
No, I think you got it. There's nobody that knows it better than Lenora. So while we may have fumbled over fixing it a couple times, she's the go-to, and her department's the best case for getting info and getting guidance.
So are there any other questions about the process that we're going to use to review the proposals or the identification of participants? So then, Lenora, can I ask you to send the names of the 3 applicants or the proposals that we've received and any sort of supporting documents that you would need from the Citizens Advisory Council members? Can you send that to Kadi so that Kadi can communicate that to the staff supporting the Citizens Advisory Council, and they can do the assessment of potential appearance of conflict of interest, and also have a sense of the confidentiality or non-public records expectations going into the process.
Okay. I just only have just a procedural question. I know Innovation and Performance put the RFP in, so they're normally the client, the department.
Okay.
I know it's for on behalf of Equity Commission, but so are they?
Yeah, I don't think Catherine is on today. So how about, Kadi, can you circle back around and talk to Catherine about pulling those documents together and whether they should be submitting them, the documents to CASE, or if that's something that we should be submitting?
Yes.
Or yeah, just how they want us, or do they want to just be CC'd on everything? What we can probably maybe, Kari, if you wanted to have a quick internal meeting or something, or email thread. I know Catherine's very good, just to make sure that we keep them aware, since it is via them, even though it's on behalf of the Equity Commission. It's just to make sure we have it.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah.
And David, as we interact with that internal and external, Nayla is a great person to pull in, because she's going to understand and be able to explain everything they need to do in a high level.
Good point.
Okay.
Are there any other questions, any other comments about the RFP, where we stand, and because otherwise we're going to move forward, but I do want to recognize that the county executives has joined us. So before I turn to Arvind to see if he wanted to share any news and any updates, I'd like to close out this agenda item. So any other thoughts, any other observations?
Well, Kari, you have a date set for tentatively, and that was April 30th. So I guess once everybody sends you their list, I guess we'll have to see if that's still feasible, or for all the people in the group, or.
I think most should have it on their calendar already. We might need to readjust for those who have been added on, but let's go ahead and keep it and work from there.
And Kadi, when do you think, how long do you think the process will take? It's 3 proposals. The proposals will be distributed. What do you hope to make the decision on April 30th and come out with a recommendation at that time?
It really depends on the applications that we're reviewing. So
Okay.
it's really up to the selection committee to decide. So the process can, take, I think we're ballparking June, July, but depending on, again, the group of applications, it might take longer.
Well, I for one would like to empower that group to make a decision and to move us forward. I do think, we've put a lot of time and effort to this process, but I think we need to bring it to fruition and bring the resource to bear. So I think it would be great if that group could kind of come out of that meeting, or we could come out of that week with a clear recommendation. Any other thoughts? Before we move to the next item, which is the GARE employee survey, I do want to recognize Armin had a conflict at the start of the meeting. Our county executive, Armin Budish, has joined us today. Armin, so far we've reviewed both the introduction of the legislation to county council to create a new office of inclusion and diversity. And we've also talked about Ted Carter's transition, the new staff that are here, Leon's promotion. But I want to give you a couple minutes. Is there anything you wish to share with the Equity Commission? Any other updates that you'd like to share at this time?
No, I'm I'm sorry I'm late, and I'm going to have to get off now pretty soon. For those of you who probably don't know, City of Cleveland police shot and killed somebody this morning, and it's going to potentially create more issues for the city, but also for the county, obviously. I believe, I'm not certain, but I believe it was an African-American that was killed. Obviously that's taken our attention. The sheriff is at the scene and involved with the City of Cleveland Police right now.
Okay.
So I apologize for getting distracted, but I'm going to continue to be distracted for a while. So just wanted to come on and let you know I'm not ignoring you. I don't ever intend to do that.
Well, with the introduction of the legislation this week, it was an exciting week to have items begin to come forward, to see us formalize some of your executive orders, your proposals, and I think there's a lot more to come, but we also understand that there are competing priorities. And so understand if you need to drop off, Armin. We're going to move forward with the agenda, if that's okay. And
Yep.
I do want to just acknowledge if there's anyone else that has to step off during this meeting. We do understand that there are a lot of things going on this week, but we're going to move at this time to the GARE employment survey. Kadi, can you please just tell us where we stand with the employee survey? To me, it seems very exciting.
Absolutely. So as members of GARE, the Government Alliance for Race and Equity, we have access to a countywide survey tool that they have. It'd be more of a climate survey of baseline data for employees. And because we are members of GARE, we have this option of launching it come January 2022. They have a huge wait list. And they actually encouraged us to wait a little bit to get a little bit of training for folks who will not even understand how to answer the questions on the survey. So it actually makes sense for us to wait until after our consultant. So I believe that the timing is okay. But the recommendation here would be for the Equity Commission to approve this possibility of having this survey launch next year with the assistance and technical assistance of a few folks from GARE as well as Race Forward.
So I want to open it up to the committee. I have some thoughts and questions, but I'd like to see if any committee members or commission members want to introduce any of their thoughts or questions first.
David, my only concern would be if one of the proposals that's under review contained a different survey instrument already being brought forward by that proposer, so that there might be some conflict between using their preferred survey instrument and also using their instrument. So for that reason, I wonder if we might possibly let GARE know that while we strongly want to do this, we have to dig a little deeper into the proposals to make sure the consultant we select is compatible with the GARE survey.
Okay, that's an option for us. Any other thoughts or questions that we want to have some discussion around?
Kari, are there any examples that could be brought up when we're talking about this survey of sample questions or things to where we can get our head around what the idea is before we make a motion to move it forward or to kind of put our place in line?
Absolutely. So I have access to all the questions. We have the tool. It's also live on the GARE website and the portal. But I'd be happy to send it to the Equity Commission for you to review. I also just want to add that one of the aspects to the survey would be that you would be able to compare your jurisdiction to other jurisdictions. So GARE has hundreds of jurisdictions as members. And I think one of the things that would be interesting to see is how Cuyahoga County compares to others across the country. But to your question, Director Pelham, yes, we can absolutely send those out.
Thank you.
Any other questions or any other feedback or comments? So I want to say that I know that this is something that was specifically recommended to us by, if I remember correctly, Milwaukee County. Kind of to Paul's point, my memory of our brief from them, and I'll ask Leon and Sabrina if I've got this right, because we've done now a couple briefs with them, that they suggested that we use the GARE survey regardless, because then we can compare ourselves to their national respondents. And so I think we would have a very strong comparative group. It's also something that has been really developed over time and has, I think, a stronger body of evidence than maybe something that would be developed locally or something that would be developed by a consultant. So that's a first point that I think we should be giving some consideration to. I think the second point is, I do think we've made a commitment to partner with GARE, and for pretty obvious reasons. I think given their organizational structure, given the body that is supporting them from municipalities and governments around the country. So I think we've I don't want to say we've standardized around them, but we've clearly pursued them as a partner, and this is the tool that they're proposing that we use. And so for me, those are important considerations. But I'm going to just check. Leon, do I have it right? Is my memory of their recommendation of both Milwaukee, I think, County, as well as GARE's recommendations around the development of the survey, is that accurate?
I would say that Milwaukee County did recommend that when we felt we were in a good place to survey our staff and our workforce so that we can get a baseline. I think as far as GARE, GARE provides a lot of tools that are just out there for us to use as members, and I think we have to make a decision on our own if those tools are applicable, for our workforce or for our community, and move forward from there. But I do believe, if I recall correctly, that Milwaukee County did recommend us to do a survey of our workforce. To Paul's point, I would say that I'm not sure in the RFP if we asked, as far as the scope of services, when we're talking about training, if a survey is a part of that scope of services, which I don't think it is. I think that the training, however, may put our workforce and the individuals who are responding to the survey in a better place to be able to respond in a more accurate fashion, just having some understanding around certain definitions that we may be responding to on the survey. So if that clears anything up.
So Kadi, is there a reason that we're really pushing for a decision today? Is it because of the duration it takes to get GARE started and the demand that exists for their attention and their support?
No, I think we just wanted to make sure that it was on your radar for discussion. I don't think a decision needs to be made today. It was more for making sure that we're ahead of the game here, just because the process takes long. At our next working group, we'll have someone from Race Forward talk to us about what it would mean for something like the survey to be launched here at Cuyahoga County next year. So I think it was just more to make sure that we're proactive.
So, I mean, I feel like there's a couple options here for us. And, you know what, well, I think one part of it is I think we could make this decision today as a commission. And, I don't think it's etched in stone that we can't change our mind down the road. But I think the sooner we make some of these decisions, I think the stronger our commitment becomes, and we have a date that we're then working towards, and we can organize a date, and if necessary, amend. And so I would say that's one. I would also say, that if the commission feels like it's too premature for that, then if we can punt, we can review this at the next meeting. So I for one would support us making a decision today, but I wouldn't want to do that if others weren't there. I realize, Sheba, I haven't had a chance to hear from you. Any specific thoughts or comments about either the survey or the process that we go through to make that selection?
No, well, just a short one. And that, I remember Milwaukee saying when someone asked them the question, what is something you wish you had done differently? I remember them saying that they wish they'd done that survey. So I thought that was critical, because you want a baseline, you want to know where you're starting so you can manage and you can measure a change. I mean, it's not useful if you can't measure it. Right. So I agree that we definitely need the survey, and I'm conflicted only in that as an alternate and on the working group. I don't want it to seem a conflict of interest in that I would go for the survey and the vote being today. And that being sort of a conflict, self-serving kind of position. So,
okay.
This is Lenora. I agree. That similar to Sheba, that was what stuck out to me with the Milwaukee interview that we had, the meeting that we had with them. I also think because it mentioned that if GARE does it, that there are certain agreements that have to be approved, and the Equity Commission or the working group are not contracting authorities. So if we're going to need agreements approved, then we need to start start that process. Mm-hmm. Also, I agree with what you're saying, David, that a decision today is made based on the information that we have today and where we think we're headed. As we get further information, we're a living organism, which means we can, as we get better data, make a better decision if that's not applicable downstream.
Well said. So is there a motion then that we move forward with the GARE survey as proposed?
I move.
Is there a second?
Second.
And I'll second Leon second if it has to be a commission member. So we'll do all those in favor of
If I may, David.
Oh,
if I may,
discussion.
David,
Sure.
I would like to say, having heard the discussion, especially the members of the commission that have been with us from the beginning, the information on Milwaukee, I would like to indicate that I feel my concerns have been addressed, and I can also support this.
That's great. Any other discussion? Any other questions or any other feedback? So all those in favor of moving forward with the GARE employee survey, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So Kadi, if you could please follow up with GARE to let them know that that's what we would like to do. I think we're going to gather information, and I understand you'll be bringing it back to us as to Lenora's point, as we get a better understanding of what the process is. And this also maybe helps us inform our selection with the RFP or when we begin to negotiate with them, just so they understand our plan. Kadi, anything else you need from us on this point?
No, thank you.
All right. I think we're to the point of closing remarks. Are there, so I'm going to open it up. One, is there, number one, Kadi, are there any items that we were supposed to discuss on today's agenda? Any other business that you thought was, or perspectives that were, you were looking for feedback on?
My only question would be from the collaboration piece of all the moving pieces. We have the Citizens Advisory Council on Equity, the Equity Commission, and the working group. Just, receiving a few bullet points of more guidance for the working group, and vice versa. How can the working group best support the Equity Commission if there's time? But I think we covered most of the business on the agenda.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I know, so Lenora and I had a call with Naila Bird and Laura Black talking about that alignment. I think there's great work being done by both groups. I think it is important for us to ensure that that work is sort of recognizes each other, and there's touch points, there's connections, and there's a review of how the plans are being implemented. I know that the intent is for Lenora and I to regularly talk with Naila and Laura and maybe some of their commission members, but I do want to hear from the rest of the commission. What are your thoughts, or what's your vision for how we can ensure that there's alignment between the Citizens Advisory Council on Equity and the Cuyahoga County Equity Commission? What are your perspectives?
David, is there any benefit to having a member almost brief out, if you will? We have a Emergency Services Advisory Board, and while they're not voting members, we have members from, we call it NEORAMS, the Northeast Ohio Regional Maritime, where they do maritime security with the Coast Guard or others that may not have local input, but obviously we play a role with. We have the FBI, we have our hazard, our LEPC, or hazardous material guys that come in and provide briefs, so that, because we don't live in a bubble, so some of the things that we're doing from a fire and police and public works level locally interact with these groups on a day-to-day. And I say all that to say, maybe having a liaison brief, or, whether it's a different member from the case committee speak at our meetings, just to give a conversation to where we can begin to learn or break down who's on that board and how we can best interact and how we can best serve each other by getting to know them. And if it's through this medium, whether it's, a round table when we can actually all get together and just talk, kind of a crossfire conversation, I think establishing a common link that's not just Naila or Laura Black, because while they are as superb gets, those one-on-one conversations, between you and Dr. Gullett, or myself and Stephen Cavendish, and there's so much value in that we can learn from each other that we may not have had. So I think those are two different approaches, whether it's a liaison report out, or even a subcommittee report out on how they had put their plan out. Someone that sits on each one of those, to where they could send some information to us and vice versa.
Those are two great suggestions. Are there other suggestions, other ideas on how we could really speak to what I think Kadi's recognized and we've heard a little bit about, of ensuring that there's alignment?
I did want to mention, as part of that report out that Alex is mentioning, in our meeting yesterday, Naila did mention that she has a conflict because she already has a meeting at 10 o'clock with, I can't remember, a judge or administrative judges or something. So I don't know if, again, not that we have to change the timing, I'm just wondering if that's an option for another time slot that would allow her, as the actual internal liaison, to be able to give a direct report as part of like the opening minutes, or if we changed our time.
Yeah, I like the idea a lot of affording them the opportunity to participate. Obviously, this is an open group. Anyone can view it. We're unfortunately not together yet in person. So I would say, for one, I think this is one option to follow up that I'd ask Kadi to follow up to Alex's idea or Lenora's idea. You know, do we go back to them and do we ask them if it would make sense for one of them to be invited to participate in these meetings, whether it's a static participant, be it Naila if we have to change the time, Laura, or you know, the chair or a representative or a rotating participant to really speak to the work that they're doing. I like that idea. Kadi, would you be willing to take that back to them and get their feedback on what would make the most sense for them? Okay. I think the other thing that I heard from Alex, and I just want to check in on, I do think there's some value in starting to look at, do we have like an integrated meeting, a joint meeting, or something that maybe is more like not quite a summit, but something that's different from an ongoing meeting. And we maybe take a little bit more time and we do a little bit more cross group discussion. Alex, is that sort of speaking to some of what you're thinking about make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. That would be excellent. Like a joint check-in or.
Right.
David, you know, with how hard it is to get everybody together, even if it was biannual or biennial, yeah, twice a year. Get those mixed up every now and then. But twice a year that we get together, and then there's some checkups, there's some, hey, we found this, to where we're not waiting, if you will, for each other's reports at the end of the year. You know, if there's something, if we need to change direction on something or something pops up, we can change and we can, you know, Semper Gumby, we can always flexible and we can keep moving.
Yeah, I think that's excellent.
I agree. So Sheba, Paul, any other thoughts on this? Because I think we have 2 items to go back to them with, but I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity just to share perspective.
No, I agree. I was nodding my head. Yeah, I'm in agreement.
And my only comment is that a joint meeting will require careful preparation, so we make good use of the valuable time that we're tying up for members on both sides. So we want to be prepared with some specific topics for discussion at a joint meeting.
I think that is important. I think an ideal would also be, you know, it would be wonderful to get together in person and, you know, to begin to have more of this interaction. I think it would, you know, there's limits to how much we can do that, but I also think we're limiting ourselves by relying on technology and also not allowing the public to engage. So Kadi, given the feedback you've gotten, would you be willing to take both options back to the Citizens Advisory Council on Equity and ask if they have interest to send a representative to our meeting, if they would like us to send a representative to their meeting, but also then if it would make sense for us to begin planning for a joint meeting that, you know, maybe takes the place of one or both of our meetings for a month to be responsible with schedules or not. And I just be very open to know what their feedback is.
Sure. I just want to add also that the Citizens Advisory Council on Equity they have 2 reports, I believe, throughout the year, one in June and one in December. I wonder if we could also use those as check-in points before or after. So just wanted, but absolutely, I'll go back to the Citizens Advisory Council on Equity and see what makes the most sense given the feedback that we received today.
I think that's great. You know, I know we have a lot of other participants in the kind of closing 3-4 minutes that we have here. I think we've gone through our agenda. I do think there are some other items we can talk about in terms of the pilot work and expanding to other departments. I don't know that we can get through that in the next 4 minutes, and so I would table that. But what I would ask is, you know, just because we have folks like Edwin Nunez and Maria Daniels and others sitting in today, Sabrina and Leon, any other comment from supporters and participants in today's discussion?
Well, I personally want to thank you for letting me be part of the process. And it's good to know that this committee is a reflect of its purpose, equity and inclusion. And being a Hispanic male, I want to be part of it. And hopefully in the future, we are going to have people that represent what we're working for. So Lenora, thank you for letting me be part of it.
Wonderful. Any other closing remarks from any committee members or guests?
David, there's one thing I would like to add, and I've thought about this for the last little bit, and I think the last couple of days have really brought it back to the forefront of my thoughts. In public safety, you see a lot of times when there are tragic events or really bad runs that happen, there's something called CISM, or critical incident stress management. With what happened to Mr. Wright in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, what we've seen happen the last couple of days here, there are different things that affect people different ways. And I would personally like to ask the working group, whether it's through GARE, whether it's through reaching out to some of our contacts, to see if there are, not so much for the public safety side, but for our employees, for people in the community, to where there is something as these events occur and as these events definitely affect the way people go about life. Is there some sort of program that's out there similar to what responders do, similar to even a PTSD type program that originates in this equity realm, and whether it's something that we can bring in, because we talk a lot about if there's a coworker death, or if there's a death in the family, or if there's a line of duty death, but that's not the only thing that affects the way people look at stuff. It's not the only way it affects people's psyche. So if that's something the working group could look at, and I'm going to look at it as well. But I think that's something that this group could really take on, because whether it's conversations, whether it's enhancing the ability of our EAP through HR, that people can deal with things. It's just something I'd like to put in the forefront of everybody's mind, because this stuff's not going away. It's not, and it affects everybody differently. So, it's something I think we should really look at.
Yeah, I agree with Alex. That's a great point. They had an article on one of the online news about an actual baseball player, Major League Baseball player, that because he used to play in Minnesota and has a lot of family or friends there, that they gave him the day off for him not to pitch or play that day because he needed a mental health day. So it's very appropriate.
David, this is Leon, just to close out, and I believe we had a similar discussion very recently, you and I. And, Alex, what I think you were talking about is, secondary trauma that people, experience at different levels. And, trauma-informed care is very important. And there's a lot of programs, there's a lot of centers here in the city of Cleveland who focus on trauma-informed care, but definitely secondary trauma impacts our relationships and how we interact and engage with people at work, and also how we take those things home and interact and engage with our families. So, the work that is happening here at Cuyahoga County can be very stressful, right? But then the things that you carry with you when you see people who look like you, getting killed or getting hurt. You carry that stress as well, and you really don't know how to handle it. And like you said, it affects people in certain ways. So I completely agree that we need to address that, and that's something that we need to discuss in the future. Thank you for bringing it up.
I want to say that when I first came on board, so I'm not sure who it was or what group and what venue the conversation came up. I know that some of the work is being done in Cuyahoga County, because I remember being so very impressed. It was around the same time that you were recording the conversations on equity. And I remember there was a group that was talking about health disparities. And one of the issues was tackling mental health in the African-American community. And I'm sure it exists everywhere, but particularly in the African-American community. And I'd like to look back through the notes to see just who brought that up, because I was so impressed with what they had to say about recognizing the disparity because of the issues that existed in our communities today, the issues that were existing back when I started in August and September. And I remember them talking very eloquently about what some of those issues are. And so, Alex, when you bring this up today, I'm thinking that this exists somewhere, and how do we tie it back to what work we're doing right now? Because I remember just being very impressed by those conversations that happened at the very beginning, and I just don't remember the venue for which I heard those conversations. I know it's part of the diversity equity initiative going on right now, but I don't remember the organization or the individuals that were doing the talking. But it speaks right to what Alex is bringing up. So here's me fishing through the notes just to see where we were when I first started, to see maybe where I heard that and what part they were playing
So
in this initiative.
As I track time, I'm noticing that Marisha and others have joined in. I want to watch time. We're a couple minutes over. We started a few minutes late for technical issues. I think that's information that we can ask Kadi to go back and also include in the minutes as we reflect on it. I think it is important that we're humanizing today's discussion. We've had a lot of discussion about county policy and practice and procedure. And I think given the events of the day, given the events of the nation that are going on, it's probably critical that we do take extra time to reflect on the fact we're talking about people and actual incidents. So I'm going to see, I don't know if Marisha or Sabrina were trying to chime in before we close, because I opened it up for discussion. And because I want to be mindful of everyone's time. Were there any other thoughts, any other feedback that we were trying to gather at this time?
I'm fine, David. I'll follow up with Sheba.
Okay.
I just changed my name. I'm M. Daniels. But to Alex's point, an article that came up about Black Mental Health Week and the things that were going on in the news recently, I will find that article and I will send it to everyone so that you all can review it. So I think that might be something that we could look into that could help us with the working group in taking those steps forward.
That's great. I think that's the right placement of the work to be explored. And I think the working group has got a great team and some momentum to move it forward. So it's 11:04, and I think we're going to go ahead and close today's meeting. I appreciate you all giving us an extra minute or two to have some important discussion about how this work actually really matters to our community, to our residents, and to the public. They should be at the center of the work that we're doing, and I appreciate your comments, the discussion, and I look forward to talking again soon. So if there are no other objections, today's meeting's adjourned.